You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 28. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello again, and welcome to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 28. I am your host, Jeff Hewlett.
And I'm Craig Cohen.
Today we're going to be talking about the city on the edge of forever. Pretty significant episode in the history of Star Trek. And we're very privileged today to have with us a special guest, April Hebert.
Hello, gentlemen.
So great to have you back with us.
It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yes, we have too.
Yeah, excellent. And April's going to be joining us for our supplemental City on the Edge of Forever discussion later this week. But we wanted to bring her on now and, just sort of tease that supplemental, but also talk to April about the recent Star Trek The Experience article that was in the official Star Trek magazine.
Yes, issue number 48 of Star Trek magazine, the most recent issue. And we're really excited about it because, it's been over 5 years since we closed, but we're still beloved the world over.
Yes, you definitely are. And I was really excited to see that both you and Vernon were featured. But one thing that jumped into my mind when I saw the magazine article is, how did it come about?
Well, we actually got emails, both of us. Well, I think he might have contacted Vernon first. Because Vernon's kind of out there with all his stuff, his Star Trek My Experience page and all the things that he's been doing. So I think he might have been more easy to reach. So I believe that Chris Cooper, who is the editor and who actually wrote this article, he contacted Vernon, and it was just Chris's idea. He said, I want to do something. I can't tell you how many people miss it. And so he was thinking about doing a huge spread, which he did. I think it's like 8 pages. I myself have a very nice 2-page spread in the middle of it. But and so Vernon sent him, he sent Vernon some questions. Vernon answered them. Vernon sent him, all the pictures in there are from Vernon's stash of pictures that he's collected over the years. And so he sent those to him, and he sent him my email address. And so Chris contacted me, and I was only too happy. I could talk about the experience all day. And so he sent me some questions, and I answered them. And I have to say that he used every word that I said.
Wow.
Every single word. He didn't edit any of it out, and picked some great pictures. And if you read this entire thing, you do really get a flavor for what the experience was like. So people who never got the chance to be there really should get this issue, because I think it really does give them a taste of what it would have been had they been there. And those of your listeners out there who have been there and know how wonderful it was, it really is kind of a trip down memory lane. I had people emailing me and said that there were tears in their eyes while they were reading it, which means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the fact that the sort of official Star Trek magazine was recognizing the work that everybody did on the experience, and it's sort of, I don't know if validated is the right word, but it sort of cemented, how important it is to everybody who was involved, and also the people that spent a lot of time there.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And Larry Nemeczek was a great contributor to the article, as well as John Van Sitters, who's the Paramount guy that does all the retail stuff for Paramount. All the really cool stuff that you can buy. It has to go through him, and he had a lot to do with it. A lot of people who worked on putting it together are asked to contribute to this article, and so they did, and that was really nice. And they had some wonderful things to say, not just about the experience itself, but about us, about our fans. It really is a love letter to the experience.
Yeah, one thing that I found interesting reading it, I've learned a lot about the experience, from the interview that Jeff and myself did with you guys, you and Vernon. But also, Vernon's documentary. But one of the things,
you got the underground tour, I got to tell you.
yeah, and our meetup in Vegas. But one of the things in the article that I really liked, or that was sort of new to me, was all the talk of how they sort of decommissioned the experience and the process of going through and inventorying all of the stuff that was in the History of the Future Museum. Right. And sort of how bittersweet it was for those guys to be cataloging all that, realizing that, they were basically, helping, dismantle the experience.
Right. Yeah. And that made me feel, sad, but still good to recognize that they recognized the importance of it. That they put it together and they knew it was great. But, coming in to take it all apart, take it down, and catalog all that stuff, which a lot of that stuff went back to Paramount. Some of it got auctioned off, and some of it got destroyed. And the sad story about the Enterprise D hitting the ground is pretty. I can't even think about it without tearing up, because that was a beautiful ship. Anybody who went there and saw that massive Enterprise D.
Yeah, they had pretty much built the structure around that ship, right?
Yes, they did not finish the ceiling until it was put in. So they brought it in, they set it up, and then they completed the overhead work after it was already in place. So, yeah.
Wow. So I don't want to speak for Craig, but I'm sure he feels the same way as I do. When this article was published in such a prolific magazine, I kind of got a little choked up. The amount of time that Craig and I both spent there over the years on our trips to Vegas, just to see the experience acknowledged in such a significant publication like that, it really served to solidify in our minds, and I'm sure in the minds of everybody who read it, how much of a contribution the experience made to everybody that set foot in that place. And my memories of that are so ingrained that I can still remember every time I set foot there.
It's interesting. I mean, there's always going to be naysayers, but we occasionally hear of somebody who says, well, it wasn't that important. It was just a ride. It's not canon. None of those things are true.
Not at all.
No. And anyone who worked on it, whether they were, just people who worked on it every day when it was open, or people who designed it and put it together, everybody cared about it. And you can tell that by how they describe what they did in it. And just really, I can't thank Chris Cooper enough for doing this. It really does put Star Trek The Experience where it belongs in the universe of Star Trek. We were very, very important. We served a really, really important purpose. And there's nothing like that now, and so there's something missing, but it was there. It was amazing, and we have great memories of it.
Yeah, and now it's preserved in the magazine, which I'm sure people can still get on the newsstand. I went to my local Barnes and Noble and picked it up, and it's got Chris Pine and Bruce Greenwood on the cover. And you said it was issue number 48. 48. Okay, yeah. And it's a quarterly magazine, so. It's not like you have to worry about the next issue coming out before you have a chance to run out and get it.
Winter 2014. Plus, I think you can get it digitally if you go to the Star Trek magazine. I think it's Titan Publishing website. You can actually order it, pay for it online, and then download the whole thing digitally.
Oh, excellent. And there's a lot of, in addition to all of the great words, there are a lot of great, great photographs.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, and also they did put in here a picture of Tom Deishley, who died just a couple of months ago, and they dedicated it to the memory of Tom Deishley, which really, when I saw that, of course, another tear in my eye. But that was very sweet and very thoughtful.
Yeah, that was nice to see.
Yeah, and I know that that Craig and I had pictures of ourselves with Tom, and we've been talking back and forth to you on Twitter during the time when that whole thing went down, and
Yeah.
you know we I know Craig and I both felt really terrible, not only about Tom's passing, but the fact that we knew that you and Vernon felt so deeply about this, and it's
Oh,
such a
everybody
tragedy.
did. Yeah, it wasn't just the two of us, but everybody who knew him. He was such a great guy. Such a great guy, and it was just really a tragedy. And at this point, we don't know too much about all the details, but it's still up in the air as to what exactly happened. So hate to bring you guys down. What a downer, but yeah, it was very sweet to see that dedication.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a downer, but I'm glad that we can get together and acknowledge the contributions that he brought and the joy that he brought all of the fans that came
Oh,
to the experience. It really
yes,
deserves to be acknowledged.
a consummate performer.
Totally.
Amazing.
Yeah, I remember when I met him at the experience, and he was so in character,
Oh yeah.
and it almost made me laugh. Kind of the when I walked out thinking, wow, these actors, they're so method that you can't even break their character. It's almost like one of the guards outside of like Big Ben or the palace in England. You can't break their resolve.
That's exactly how I used to think about it. I
Wow.
thought that was my job, to not break character. That was how important it was to the Star Trek universe, that we lived in that universe, and we could not deny it, because to deny it would be to deny Star Trek, and we couldn't do that. That's what we were paid to do.
Absolutely,
So
and I know that you probably appreciate it, but it deserves to be said again that all of the joy that you guys that worked at the experience brought to every fan that set foot in that place is immeasurable. I mean, I don't know if we can quantify the joy that all of those people felt, especially during convention times when all those people were at the Hilton and they were probably all looking forward to being at
it
the
was.
experience.
Yes, I will tell you that a lot of them, they would go over occasionally to the convention, which was in the Hilton Convention Center, but spent most of their time in Quarks. Why not? There's alcohol and Ferengi, and you know. So absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to talk a lot more with April later this week when we really sort of do our City on the Edge of Forever deep dive. But prior to that, me and Jeff are going to do our regular episode commentary. So, Jeff, do you want to go into the details of the City on the Edge of Forever?
Absolutely. The City on the Edge of Forever aired originally on April 6th of 1967, and we got our remastered episode on October the 7th of 2006.
All right, and I'm going to give a really, really, really brief summary because we're going to be talking about this episode a lot. After taking an accidental overdose of cordrazine, Dr. Leonard McCoy goes back in time and changes history.
Very cool. So we will not belabor this anymore, and we will get started with our scene-specific commentary. Cue up your episodes in 3, 2, 1.
And here we are with yet another flyby shot of the Enterprise.
Again. But cool thing is we start in with a shot of the red alert beacon on the console flashing, so we know we're in a danger zone right here. And another random crewman in the Chekhov's position.
Yeah, but at least Sulu's there.
Yep, Sulu's back in action.
And I like how Scotty's sort of just chilling on the bridge.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that he's hanging out yet again, and they have some random red-shirted girl standing next to Kirk there. So a lot of camera tilting going on in this.
Yeah. Well, this episode was directed by Joseph Pevney, who's directed most, or he's one of two directors who has the most directing credits on Star Trek, and he was chosen for this episode because he had some movie credits. So they thought with the cinematic nature of this script that he could bring, that to the fold. And I have a quote from him from a Starlog interview he did in 1988, where he said, essentially, City on the Edge of Forever was a motion picture. I treated it as a movie. So as we watch along, we can sort of take note of that and see how cinematic this episode plays compared to some of the other ones we've watched.
True. Scotty took over for Sulu's position on the bridge when Sulu got taken out by that little spark from the computer.
Yeah, and that looks like a drug I'd like if I was ever down
It is a happy
feeling
drug.
Feeling under the weather. Whatever that is, man, it perks Sulu right up. But we know that too much of a dose of that is not a good thing.
Yeah. So, something that we missed a minute ago while we were talking was Kirk gave Uhura an order to send his past week's worth of logs to Starfleet.
No.
This is the first time I think we've heard him actually using his logs for anything.
Yeah.
Besides being court-martialed, of course.
Yeah.
But and something about this episode that I noticed as I watched over again to do some research for this talk. This is the first time I've really noticed Kirk calling McCoy Bones.
Oh, wow.
So prominently. I'm sure he's done it before, but he does it a couple times here, very loudly and prominently. So I was like, wow, oh, look, he really is calling him Bones. So
yeah. That's
another
funny.
neat thing about this stinger too is that you have all 6 of the major recurring players on the bridge during the stinger.
Yeah, wow, that's got to be a somewhat rare occurrence.
Yeah, how often do you see, Scotty and McCoy on the bridge with everybody? The other guys are always on the bridge and Uhura, but, to get all of them up there, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
So McCoy has accidentally stabbed himself with a heavy dose of the So he's gone mad, and this reminded me of when he goes mad in what's the one?
Naked Time?
Yeah. Maybe the Naked Time, or didn't he also go nuts in the Return of the Archons?
That's possible.
Yeah.
I believe it.
It reminded me of that. He acts the paranoid sort of madman.
Yeah,
very,
he does
very
that
well.
really well. So we're getting a little recap from Kirk, a little voiceover recap that McCoy's in a wild frenzy. Now they're all looking. The security guys are looking for him. We're not sure if the madness from the Cordrazine is permanent or not, or temporary. And here we get a great shot of the doors opening. You see McCoy's face. Now check out what McCoy does here. Is this like the human version of the neck pinch? There's like a double karate chop. It's like a kidney shot and then a neck shot.
Yeah, it almost seemed like he knew the two body points to hit to disable him, and here we get another the self-administered transport.
I knew you were going to bring that up. I know how much that burns you, man. Grinds your gears.
The more we see it, the less it bothers me, because obviously it's something that.
And another thing about that, though, here we're going to add insult to injury here for you, is that Spock makes a mention of the transporter. Now, they're going to talk about McCoy beaming down to the planet, and Spock is going to say that the transporter at that time was focused on the center of the time disturbance on the planet. Why? Why would they have focused the transporter on that? It makes no sense to me. I don't know why, but so just to set it up so that McCoy could go in there and transport himself down.
Yeah, that's funny. Or you know what? Maybe that transporter technician was just bored.
Yeah, right.
And he was like, "Hey, let me see. Let me."
And why was that guy standing like that? Why was the transporter tech standing on the edge, the side of the console, with his back to the door instead of standing in front of the console?
Well, so McCoy could hit him.
Of course. Hey, check that out. Uhura is on the away team.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We're going to talk about some differences between Harlan Ellison's original treatment, his final script, and then the actual script that was filmed. But in his early treatment, Janice Rand was included with the away
God.
party. So
Wow, she's been gone a while.
Yeah, but he got this assignment pretty early. He was one of the first writers that Roddenberry reached out to. So I think his treatment when he wrote it, still included Janice Rand. And here we have this awesome set.
Yeah, it's a great set.
Yeah.
Really, really cool stuff. I love the shape of the Guardian. It's not perfectly round. It's kind of bulges out on the one side there. And you have these like broken columns all around it. And Kirk says that the ruins extend all the way to the horizon. So you can imagine how huge this city or whatever this used to be was at the time.
Yeah. And there's a long-standing sort of idea by a lot of people out there that James Doohan is the voice of the Guardian, which is not the case. It's actually the voice of Bert LaRue, who would end up being seen and heard on a couple of future episodes of this series, including Bread and Circuses, The Game Masters of Triskelion, Pattern of Force, and The Savage Curtain.
Nice. I think McCoy pops out from behind that rock.
Yes.
He's just hiding behind there.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And it's, this is interesting because Spock can't figure out what this is and even says he can't explain it.
Yeah, it's not a machine in the sort of definition that we understand.
And I love how they synced the lights inside the Guardian to the voice.
Yeah.
It looks so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Just the amount of time and money they had to put into building that and making it so the lights could flicker on and off in different sections and at different intensities. For a show that's this low budget, that's actually a really cool touch.
Yeah, yeah. This was one of the shows where the development process was so long because they were trying to find ways to make it come closer to the budget that they'd be able to shoot it at.
Yeah.
So that's why this episode has a little bit more of a development process. I think it started in March of '66 and extended all the way through like mid-December.
Yeah, that's quite a long run. I love how the Guardian like semi-insults Kirk and Spock a couple of times, and Spock looks kind of like,
Yeah.
Obviously, your knowledge of science is primitive. It's like, really?
Yeah. Doesn't he say something like he's been around for, 100 times, 200,000 years or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's really, really, really old.
I love the use of stock footage in the Guardian as the video projections.
Yeah.
So mostly, I think old Paramount films.
Yeah.
Yeah. Up and here comes McCoy. And
you know what?
I love the killers and murderers and assassins. I never get tired of that.
Yeah. And
and an air pinch. This is one of the rare episodes where there are multiple nerve pinches too, by the way.
Yeah, I guess there's enough time between them.
There are at least two. I believe two.
Yeah.
So you'll see another one. So now I love how Kirk is going to think about using the Guardian as a way to go back and save McCoy's life.
Yeah, well, because at this point they're not sure if McCoy will ever get better.
Well, couldn't they beam back to the ship and just slingshot around the sun?
Yeah. Well, you think that would?
Or they could cold start the engines?
Yeah.
3 days. It's perfect time.
But either way, they would have to travel back and then prevent him from stabbing himself?
Yeah, that's all. No, that's easy, man.
Well, easy aside from the fact that all of a sudden future versions of the crew would appear on the bridge.
Yeah, it's
and then what would they do once it was over?
Well, all they have to do is cold start the engines and then they'll just jump back 3 days. Perfect. It's easy. Nothing to it. They could have skipped this whole thing. Non-essential. Done.
Mm-hmm. And now we see that the Tricorder has a visual recording feature.
Yeah, among a million other functions that we keep learning about.
And there, McCoy has just jumped into the portal.
And Shatner really sells that dive onto the dirt, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's filthy. His clothes. Everybody's boots are covered in sand. This is an interesting set here. I wonder how much they had to pay to get all the costumes cleaned up. I
Yeah.
wonder if that was in the budget.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a line item for dry cleaning. So now this is where we learn that the Enterprise is basically gone.
Yeah, and I love how they're second guessing Uhura's use of the communicator. They're like, Scotty, check this communicator out. She's an idiot. She doesn't know how to use this thing.
She's only the communications officer. Yeah, I mean, goodness, man, what disrespect for her.
That's great. That's great. There's some other lines coming up here in a little while that are a little bit misogynistic too. So I'll point some of those out as we're going. It seems quite dire though, doesn't it? Now they're trapped. There's no ship.
Yeah,
they're stuck down there. And here's Uhura saying she's scared. I'm frightened.
Right.
Earth's not there. At least not the Earth we know. Yeah, and you'll come to find out what that Earth is like too. And look at this slow-mo, like Kirk tilting his head back is slow, and then it goes into like a regular speed of panning up. But I really like that fade to commercial. That was a really good cliffhanger there.
Yeah, no star date.
Nope, time doesn't exist, and McCoy has changed something. Did you notice that the Guardian is kind of like an old Sony Walkman? Like it only plays in one direction. You can only there was no rewind, so they can't like back up a little bit. Like they have to like play it all the way through to the end of time, I guess, so they can actually see how time ends, maybe, or it just comes up to the present. Who knows? But then they have to watch it from the beginning again, so they have to watch it from like dinosaurs all the way through, or from the Big Bang through. How does it work? Is it only when humans existed? Is that the only time that it can display? Or
and Spock somehow synced up with the tricorder too.
Yeah, he's recording what's going on. He recorded what was going on before, and now he's going to try to sync up when McCoy jumped, and he guesstimates he can get within a month and possibly a week if they're lucky. So he can't get the exact time. But now this is interesting because Kirk is asking the Guardian what will happen and what will happen to them when they jump through. And the Guardian says, if you're successful in restoring the past to its original state, you'll be returned. Yeah. So I'm wondering how the Guardian returns people. Does it only returns you? Like if you just went in there and you just observed history, how would you get back? Like if it's basing your return on changing something or fixing something, is it like a one-way gate unless you're, I mean, if you change something for to the negative like McCoy did, it didn't bring him back. Yeah. Right? So it only brings you back if you fix something that somebody else broke? Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this device was really created to allow people to travel in time. It seemed to me like it was more just an option to observe with the built-in ability
to jump through it. Yeah,
to jump through it.
Yeah, it's like a big projector. I'm wondering if that boxing poster on the wall behind them is a real thing or was it made up for as a prop?
Mm-hmm. I would like to hope it's a real event. So as I sort of mentioned, we're going to be talking about the differences between Harlan Ellison's script and the final one that was shown on a supplemental episode that we're doing later this week. But one thing I'd like to point out in his early treatment of this episode, it didn't make it to his first draft, but when Kirk and Spock arrive here, the people are talking and they have a hard time understanding them because the dialect is 300 years old. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of a real neat touch, and it sort of shows what a great sci-fi mind like Harlan Ellison would bring to an episode of Star Trek, because a lot of people just assume that 300 years from now, we're going to talk like we talk now. I mean, we'll be talking English, but there'll be subtle differences. And, it's akin to, and Kirk even says it in the treatment. He says, it's sort of like us reading Shakespeare.
It's true.
Which, I thought it was kind of neat. And it didn't make it to his first draft of the script. And I assume it would have been difficult to showcase, because on the show, they're speaking in a manner that is very in line with, the 1960s.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been. They would have had to train all of the extras, and I guess Edith and Edith would have to speak in that early dialect versus. It probably would have been a little jarring for the viewers to try to differentiate that.
Mm-hmm. One more accent-related bit related to Ellison's original script is Keeler notices Kirk's accent and locates him to Iowa.
Oh.
Which Kirk's impressed by. And I don't think I've ever met anybody from Iowa, but I'm not sure what an Iowa accent is. And I don't think Shatner did one for this episode, or I mean for the series.
No.
But that's another neat little touch that didn't make it to the final episode, probably for that reason.
I love the story they conjure up for Spock's ears. He's Chinese. He's Chinese, and his head got caught in a rice picking machine.
Yeah.
Wow. In a mechanical rice picker. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
This cop is Hal Baylor, who before acting he was a boxer, and he'll return in Star Trek for an appearance in Elan of Troyes.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
We'll have to be on the lookout for him in that episode.
Yeah, I love. You notice the boy? They had that nice. Oh, here's nerve pinch number 2, by the way, right in broad daylight in front of all those people.
Yeah,
but I love the boilerplate. People from the future going into the past and casually walking across the street and almost getting hit by a car. Doesn't that seem to get used in every time travel from the future into the past you've ever seen? Like Back to the Future, it happens. I mean, they use it again in Star Trek 4 with a double dumbass on you, where you almost get hit by the vehicle. I mean, it keeps getting used over and over.
Yeah.
So.
Too funny.
And did you notice that Spock said that when the cop has him against the wall, they say, "Oh, how careless of your wife to let you go out that way." Like, meaning he had something on his clothes, like his wife would have made sure his clothes are nice and clean before he left. It's kind of indicative of the times this episode was written.
Yeah.
How different things are today than they were back then.
So here they are all suited up in their new 1930s garb.
Yep. Which kind of doesn't look all that different than today's clothes, actually.
Yeah, it's a flannel shirt Kirk's got there that looks very much like you might see a lumberjack wearing.
Yep. Yeah, any kind of like working guy, definitely.
Yeah, and Spock's got, the blue jeans on.
Blue jeans. And Kirk's jeans are I think they're blue, but they're a little darker.
Yeah. So
you have to wonder, were these just kind of clothes they had in the prop room there, in the wardrobe? Or were they actually their clothes they brought with them from home? Because they fit perfectly, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and it's funny in Ellison's script. He talks about, or one of his directions is, please do not have these clothes be tailored for the actors. That was a pet peeve of him in movies where people, took somebody else's clothes and put them on, and they fit perfectly.
That's a great point. That's a very good point, because they grabbed them off of a fire escape.
Yeah.
Why would they fit perfectly?
I
just so happened to find somebody who's the same exact size.
Yeah, it makes for, I think, a more appealing visual, But again, that's something I think you could pull off in, the novel version of this.
Yeah. I love the little bit of humor. They're introducing more and more bits of character-based humor in these episodes as we go on. And Kirk is asking Spock about getting the information from the tricorder, and because without the use of a ship, and Kirk wants him to build something using the technology of the day, and Spock kind of balks at that. And Kirk says, "Sometimes I expect too much of you," and Spock looks incredulous. I love that humor.
Yeah, and that came courtesy of Gene Kuhn, who, along with Roddenberry and DC Fontana, sort of did a couple of passes on this after Ellison's final draft, and Kuhn was responsible for injecting a lot of the humor.
Yeah, I think that's a great trademark of this series, that it really helps to endear you to the characters and builds just a little bit of tiny bits of their relationships through these little humorous moments. I still laugh at a lot of them as I watch these, even though I've seen them so many times.
Yeah, I like here when Kirk's introducing them, he pauses, like thinking of a possible name he can introduce Spock out, and he still calls him Spock.
He's like, I give up. He's just Spock.
So we've met Edith Keeler, played by Joan Collins, who was kind of a big deal at the time.
Yeah, probably the biggest guest star they had on this show.
Yeah.
I think from a name standpoint, from fame and name standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of people were behind the scenes were shocked that she agreed to do the show, but it was, you know, the strength of this script, and Star Trek was starting to pick up some traction, you know, in terms of, you know, actors realizing it was a pretty good gig.
Yeah, so there's actually a quote from a Joan Collins in an interview about this episode. I'll just kind of read a little bit of it here. She says she was interviewed about this show, and she said, you know, to this day, people still want to talk about that episode. Some remember me more for that than anything else I've done. I'm amazed at the enduring popularity of Star Trek and the popularity of that episode. At the time, none of us would have predicted the longevity of the show. I couldn't be more pleased or honored to be part of Star Trek history.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So here we're going to get the speech from Edith Keeler. Now, this kind of puts me off a little bit because of it seems I can understand being forward thinking, but I think she seems. I mean, you think, you know, it's World War II era. You're talking about the atomic bomb and things, so you can understand harnessing the power of the atom, but she kind of just runs crazy with that and goes right into spaceships in outer space. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
And that's funny because Ellison, for 30 years, battled a lot of lies and half-truths about his script and problems with his script and the reasons that sort of led to him being rewritten. And he published a book in the mid 90s that, you know, published his original teleplay. And it also had about a 40 to 50 page intro from him. And he says one of the main things that bothered him when he sat down to watch this episode, which he's only watched once when it aired, was this sort of Edith Keeler speech.
Yeah,
because he thought it was I think as he said, it was like Gene Roddenberry nonsense.
Yeah, well, I kind of tend to agree with him a little bit on that. I mean, it seems like they had to put something in the episode to give her more of a prominent role and like let her shine a little bit through. And I think that was one of the moments that they had to be focused on her and you know, let her abilities as an actress shine through, and the fact that, hey, we got Joan Collins.
Yeah. It's funny, just to talk a little bit more about Harlan Ellison, is he was, you know, a respected science fiction writer then, and he still is today. The year before this, he had won the Writers Guild Award for an Outer Limits episode, an excellent Outer Limits episode called The Demon with the Glass Hand that stars Robert Culp. But he was also... There's a lot of different people that sort of get credit for saving Star Trek when it was, you know, there was the threat of it being canceled. But Harlan Ellison is really the one who was single-handedly responsible for saving Star Trek. He was part of what was known as the committee, and he was the driving force behind it, which was a handful of science fiction authors who sent letters to prominent people in the field, magazine publishers, you know, high-profile fans, basically imploring them to write letters to the network, which ultimately led to the show being saved.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
And now we have this very
this
futuristic-looking setup that Spock has going.
Yeah, the apparatus,
all to power up the tricorder.
Yeah, so that he can watch the video that he recorded.
Yeah,
and he's using a knife to rotate something.
So. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about here with the tricorder is later on we see the Spock gets the sort of flash of the newspaper headline with Edith. Was that from the recording of the passage of time, or was that a record he had accessed on the tricorder?
No, he has two sets of recordings, right?
Yeah.
So he has the recording before McCoy changed the timeline, or the recording after McCoy changed the timeline, right? So he's going to compare the two.
Yeah. So that includes a newspaper headline about Edith Keeler.
Well, they've already pontificated in the basement scene before that there's a focal point in time to which they've been drawn through the Guardian, and I guess they've come to assume that the Guardian doesn't actually show you every minute of history ever. It just shows you these significant points in time, these, you know, eddies and flows, and so it stands to reason, I guess, I mean, in a science fiction way, that it would show, those moments and he could record them and see, it shows you the significant Edith Keeler moment before and the significant Edith Keeler moment after, I guess, so that he could actually look and see that maybe the newspaper clipping was significant and that it was changed. Just a theory.
Yeah, well, because my initial thought was that Spock was somehow accessing, like the ship's records.
Yeah, no,
and that didn't seem possible to me because of this, the fact they're in the past. It would like be bringing a cell phone back to the 1930s.
Yep.
I'm sure you could do all your local stuff with it, but
yeah,
you're not going to be able to
communicate with anything else. So it's a very significant thing on a personal note about that last scene that we just saw. When I was a very young child, I used to watch a lot of Star Trek with my uncle and my family, and for some reason in my mind, the phrase "stone knives and bearskins" always stuck out to me. Like for some reason, I always remember that line where Spock says, "I'm attempting to create a mnemonic memory circuit using stone knives and bearskins," and he actually uses stone knives and bearskins in a couple of times during the episode. For some reason, always stood out to me, and I love that line.
That's great.
Yeah, I think I've actually used that a couple times too, in actual real life. And you know, Spock can pick locks.
Yeah, and Edith apparently, I guess she does an inventory.
Yeah, I guess so. But apparently a new Vulcan power, lock picking.
Yeah. And I love sort of how Kirk, defends Spock here, where he says if he said that he would return him when he was done, I assure you he would have.
Yep, that they'd be returned tomorrow morning. You can bet your reputation on that, Miss.
Yeah.
So, and I think that her insight that she's about to display about Spock in particular is really, really telling. She's going to say how Spock is always going to be at Kirk's side as he's supposed to be. I think that kind of speaks a lot about the characters, especially the writing of that.
Yeah, and it shows that their relationship was illustrated, in a way that even though they weren't in their formal uniforms or in their formal roles, that there was still that captain and sort of a first officer type relationship.
Yeah, and I love how she says that you call him captain even when you don't say it. You say it. Mm-hmm. There's that level of respect that she sees between them, even when he doesn't say it, he does.
That's very cool.
I love how Shatner's got his chest exposed. He's not buttoning those top buttons there. He's like, check me out, Edith, and I'm gonna creep right after you. So this kind of bothers me. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to kind of go off on a semi rant tangent here.
Awesome.
And I don't mean to pick the episode apart, and I'm not trying to downplay it at all, but this really, really bugs me. So Kirk is going to talk about the future, even jokingly. He's going to talk about the future with Edith Keeler, right? Wouldn't you think? Now, not only does he talk about the future, but he allows himself to get emotionally involved with this woman. As a Starfleet officer, as a captain, in any scenario, especially a time travel scenario in the past, wouldn't he know better than to get emotionally involved with somebody like that? I mean, what is his end game? She can't come back with him, and he plans to fix it, and he knows he's going back.
Yeah.
Why would he get involved in this and waste time doing this when he should be preparing for McCoy's arrival and such? That kind of bugs me. I understand there's a love story here, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but it's one of the things that bugs me about this episode.
Yeah. And you can sort of look at it from the perspective that here is a mind that Kirk is sort of impressed by, with her forward-thinking ideas. And I think he's sort of just, drawn to that aspect of her. Here she is an extremely attractive woman who also has this very, very sort of interesting mind as well.
Yeah, Understood.
And he's a lonely Starfleet captain.
Understood, but he's going back to fix something that McCoy screwed up. Now he's also altering history further by getting into a relationship with her that she was never in.
Yeah.
What if she falls in love with him, he disappears, now she's heartbroken and she doesn't wind up marrying the man she was supposed to marry or something like that, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't even think about not that it matters because she's going to die, but he doesn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And that kind of bugs me that he, on some episodes, and he's very aware of things like that. And on this episode, he just completely throws it all away.
Yeah.
Kind of bugs me. I don't know. Strange. So now we've seen that Spock's... This is neat because they're watching video on the tricorder screen.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Is this the first time we've seen the tricorder used to play back video?
I believe so.
Yeah. Pretty neat. Those things are pretty versatile.
Yeah, no, that is. Oh no.
Oh man,
they fried it.
Yeah, all the tubes are blowing up and smoking. Nah, that's a shame.
Yeah,
it's interesting that he would put that on top of the bed, though.
Yeah, you'd think it would be a potential fire hazard.
Yeah,
especially with how flammable stuff was in the 1930s.
Yeah,
I mean, even early in our childhoods, we were probably wearing, pajamas and sleeping in beds that had sheets and blankets on that were would instantly go up in flames, as opposed to today where they have a lot of fire retardant stuff.
Yeah. And we got the line, Edith Keeler must die. She's gonna die. She's gotta die. Spock's seen the obituary. Yep, traffic accident. Yeah. And Kirk is fighting back on it.
Yeah.
They both can't be true. Well, so Spock, once again, if Spock wasn't here and it was just Kirk,
yeah,
would they have been able to fix it? I mean, Spock he's so clutch.
Yeah.
Not only does he build these machines out of essentially nothing, he also figures everything out pretty much.
Yeah, no, there would have been, I think Kirk would have happily lived in 1930s, America.
Yeah, until the peace movement delayed their entry into World War II and the Nazis got the A-bomb and took over the world, which isn't too far away.
Yeah.
So enjoy those few years, Kirk. Yeah, Edith Keeler must die. Oh, man. It's the fade to commercial. Oh, yeah. There it is. Another good cliffhanger. So now Kirk, against what I'm sure is Starfleet training, is conflicted emotionally about what he has to do. I mean, it's just crazy, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I'll calm down for a minute here because we're getting into another really interesting scene. I love the makeup work they did on all of these bums and vagrants.
Oh yeah,
they made them look very convincing. There's one guy that kind of walked between Kirk and there's McCoy jumping out of essentially nothing, and this bum saw him do it, and now he's going to be frozen sort of in space with this milk bottle in his hand. Good makeup job of McCoy, too. He does look really grotesque.
Yeah.
Oh, is that guy missing a finger?
I don't know. That is actor...
He is missing a finger.
Yeah. He's going to pop up in A Piece of the Action.
Oh, cool.
That's actor John Harmon.
I know of your affinity for that episode.
Yeah, he made over 200 appearances in movies and TV from 1935 to 1983.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he'll pop up in A Piece of the Action. Yeah, I've talked about when we go to the Star Trek convention in Vegas this year, potentially doing A Piece of the Action cosplay.
Oh, that would be awesome, man. I'm looking forward to that.
I probably won't follow through on that, but
come on, you got to follow through on that.
I don't know.
Come on, man.
I think it would be a cool bit of costume that you probably won't see.
Oh man. I'm
saying in terms of like if you go to a Star Trek convention, odds are you're not going to see somebody sort of in a zoot suit.
Probably not.
Which is what I think would make it cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You got to have the hat too.
Yes.
I love how McCoy frisks this guy. Like he grabs his thighs and he's gonna be checking out. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and McCoy in his state, he doesn't understand that he traveled through time here. He thinks it's some kind of
some
trickery
kind of trick.
or.
And I love how he knows what the constellations are. He's like, the constellations seem right, so he can triangulate his position on Earth. And he's giving the guy the once over here. He's like, oh, what's in his pockets? Oh, he's a biped.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell just by looking at him that he had two legs. And so he examines the guy's head. I love it.
Sort of like most aliens in Star Trek, though, were bipeds.
Does McCoy always wear a ring on his pinky?
Oh, you know what? I haven't noticed that.
I never noticed that before. Just now, he has a ring on his left pinky finger. I'll have to keep an eye out for that in future episodes and see if. So he's convinced. There it is again. You can see it right there on the pole. See that ring? Interesting. I'm gonna look on other episodes and see if he wears that.
Yeah.
'Cause I've never ever noticed that before.
This is one of DeForest Kelley's favorite episodes of the series. In his autobiography, he wrote, "I thought it was the best ensemble piece of work and that it captured a certain flavor and mood. I thought it was one of the most dramatic endings that I'd ever seen on a television show." So, add DeForest Kelley to the list of people that consider this their favorite episode of the show.
Yep. I can totally see that. I'm wondering. Actually, I'll hold off on this until because this is another interesting moment where the bum is actually looking through his pockets to try to see if he has anything. So the bum pulls out phaser 1.
Yeah.
And, he's going to vaporize himself with it. But check this out. I thought this was kind of weird. Like, he does something here where I guess he starts it on some sort of a build-up or something.
Yeah, it's like cycling up.
Yeah, and then, and then he just kind of points it at himself and boom, he's gone. So I'm wondering, did he actually shoot himself, or did he somehow click something that made the phaser overload and take himself out that way?
Yeah, I think it's got to be option B.
Yeah. So does that mean that there's a little dial on the phaser that if you roll it up too high, it just explodes?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a good design feature.
Not at all. Not at all. But did you notice before McCoy kind of passed out, he was kind of feeling tortured over the medical procedures and devices of the time? Needles and sutures and sewing people like garments.
Yeah.
Is that like a commentary? Because in Star Trek 4, he talks about, in the hospital, he talks about the barbarism of the technology of the time. So do you think that's a commentary on the medical technology at the time the episode was written? The people who wrote the episode, how they felt about hospitals and doctors and things? I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, I took it more to show that the advancements in medicine have been so extreme by the time, the Star Trek comes to be, that they really want to sort of illustrate that, medicine is really.
Yeah, it's far advanced. Yeah.
It's pretty different than it is, in the 19th and 20th century.
Yeah. Did you notice in that street scene where you saw McCoy wandering around, there was a restaurant, a photographer, and a barber pole all on the same entrance to a building? It's a hell of a lot going on in that building.
And here we had Spock miss McCoy by moments.
Yeah, mere fractions of a second there.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool to see, like, Spock embrace the, a regular job.
Yeah, he is very goal oriented in this episode. He is working to make the money to make this equipment work.
Yeah.
Whereas Kirk is just totally not focused on the goal here. He's here we're getting the line about how if Edith Keeler lives, she's going to start a peace movement that is going to delay the U.S. from entering the war, which lets Germany develop the atomic bomb first and therefore take over the entire world. I mean, could they push the stakes any higher? And now, if you were Kirk at this moment in time, you realize that the future of the entire Earth is riding on this, and also your future in getting back to the ship. So wouldn't he just say, hey, listen, you know what? I got to give up this Edith Keeler thing.
Yeah.
You know, this is just ridiculous. Why am I allowing myself to get involved in this when such huge stakes are now hanging on this?
Yeah.
He doesn't even seem to really... He just seems to focus so much on his own feelings here and his own conflict. I mean, I can't even imagine why you would be conflicted at this point.
Yeah, and I don't want to, give away too much of what we're going to talk about in terms of the original script here, because I think it will serve us better to sort of cover it on the supplemental. But there's a really good line from Spock in the original script where he says, you can't forget what our mission is, and you can't forget the promise we made to the people that we left behind.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And here he is. I'm in love with Edith Keeler. Edith Keeler must die. Jim, come on, man.
Yeah.
I understand you have feelings and all, but I can't even imagine. If I was in his position, I don't think I would be conflicted at all. Yeah. It's like, all right, you know what? I got to be sensible about this.
Now, do you think that Kirk and Edith were ever intimate?
I'm not sure how much time elapses while they're there. I mean, you don't really see. There's the point at which Spock says that the cost of the damage was 30 hours of work.
Yeah.
So you got to, if it's at 30 hours between two guys, I mean, how much were they working at the mission? I mean, it's hard to judge how long they were actually there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's possible. I don't know. It's hard to say because the time that they were living in, I don't know if that stuff really wasn't as socially acceptable. Maybe.
But Edith was pretty forward thinking.
She was, but I don't know. Yeah. Hard to say. I can't say yes or no on that one.
Mm-hmm. Because apparently Kirk's fallen very, very hard, and
yeah, as he does for many women over the course of the series.
But I mean, arguably, this is the love of Jim Kirk's life.
You think?
In Ellison's original script, it was.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I don't know. What does that say for poor Carol Marcus? You're just some follow-up, man. We had a kid and all, but,
Yeah, I mean, well, Carol Marcus was sort of retconned into Star Trek, wasn't she?
Yeah. Well...
I mean, there's no reference of her on this original series.
Yeah, she kind of was.
Which is when David has to have been born.
Yeah, potentially. Short leave or something, who knows. But, well, what about poor Miramani? She was the mother of Kirk's first child that was unborn, which we will find in the third season.
And here we have a telling moment.
Oh, yeah. But, I don't know why Spock would give him crap over this, because he knows very clearly that she's supposed to die in a traffic accident.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why he would say that he's going to tell Kirk that he shouldn't have tried to catch her on the stairs because that might have been her death. But
I think it shows more that Kirk has sort of that human instinct to react without thinking.
Yeah. Oh, did you notice she lost a shoe? She was going up the stairs with only one shoe on.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that before. No, but that's a good point that, and Spock is traditionally the logical one, and, he probably would have let her fall. Whereas Kirk, I think, was acting on instinct.
Yeah.
And here's Spock's going to give him some crap. When she stumbled, she might have died right there had you not caught her. Kirk gives him that sad puppy dog look. It's not yet time.
So Kirk is pretty much at this point, savoring every minute that he has with her.
Yeah. And I love how Spock says, do as your heart tells you to do, and millions will die who did not die before. Wow. Pour it on thick, man. Pour it on thick. But he's got to wake Kirk up. Say, Kirk, come on, man. Snap out of it, dude.
And that sort of, follows, Spock's long-term train of thought, which is, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
One, right. Yep. He carries that same philosophy all the way through. So I love that earlier on when McCoy was laying in bed, he said to Edith Keeler, uh, that it's quite right because I don't believe in you. And now he flips it around. He's thinking he's hallucinating. Now he says to her, well, I believe this whole thing's a hallucination, but I've decided that you're real.
Yeah, and she appreciates that.
Yeah. So, and there was also a I'm a surgeon, not a psychiatrist line earlier. So the tradition is continuing with these McCoy lines. The I'm a doctor, not a blank, or I'm a surgeon, not a blank.
Yeah.
So pretty cool to see that that's kind of been carried over. I love that they have certain recurring things that pop up that probably weren't in the scripts that were added in editions later on, like with DC Fontana and Roddenberry adding those humor moments and things.
Yeah.
And they stick these little lines in just for continuity's sake.
Yeah.
It's great to see these characters are treated not as one-offs or as they keep, like, early on in the first season, you see so many differences in the way they act and the things they say, and they streamline all of that stuff as the series goes on, so their characters gel and they add those little touches.
Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things about the credit on this episode is, for all this sort of back and forth bickering that Roddenberry and Harlan Ellison had in the press and personally, at the end of the episode, the only credited writer is Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
Which, I know Harlan has a right to be sort of mad, but, at the end of the day, most people sitting down to watch this episode only see his name and want to give him credit. And here we are now building towards the climax where Kirk has discovered that Keeler has...
And there's McCoy.
Met McCoy.
Uh-oh.
And now we see that Kirk and McCoy and Spock, directly cause Keeler's death.
Yep.
How would she have died in a traffic accident?
I know.
Without Kirk...
I know.
And Spock and McCoy sort of distracting her.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of those lengthy conversations. And I think this is a good moment, again, to tease for our extended discussion that's going to be coming out a few days after this episode airs. So I think that's one of the things we're going to discuss at length.
Yeah.
In that longer extended episode.
Yeah. So when it really came, when push came to shove, Kirk was able to step in and prevent McCoy from saving Edith, ensuring that they were able to return back to their time period seconds after they left. Scotty basically says, "You just left. What happened?" And they were gone for at least a few days. Yeah,
at least. So it goes to illustrate the fact that the Guardian just time travel seems almost instantaneous to the people waiting on the other side.
Yeah.
Whereas to you, you could be gone for months or years, and then when you come back, it's as if you never left.
Yeah. And Kirk at the beginning of the episode had given Scotty a directive that when he felt they had waited long enough, they would have to jump through the portal and just establish a life wherever they ended up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what else could you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the let's get the hell out of here line. Today, that's nothing, but imagine in the late 60s, that was still very taboo to say that on television. That was still considered bad language.
Yeah. At the time. And here we are at the end of the episode, and I got to say, Jeff, that was a very, very quick 50 minutes.
It was extremely quick.
We've sat through some episodes that are a little bit of a challenge. This one breezed right by. And I guess now is the important discussion we have at this point where we determine whether this is essential Star Trek viewing. And do we even have to go ahead and discuss this?
Well, I'm still kind of conflicted. There's no villain here. There's, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a reason why this should be essential.
Because it's considered by many to be the greatest Star Trek episode ever made.
That shouldn't be a reason. People's opinion shouldn't be a reason why it's essential watching.
It's sort of universal opinion, though. I mean, if people are putting together a top 5 or a top 10, this episode
opinions aren't facts, though. Opinions aren't facts.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go on record.
Go ahead. You go first.
This is essential Star Trek viewing because it really has some great, great character-defining moments for Kirk and Spock. And it's also an iconic episode.
Well, all right. I'm just kidding around with you, by the way. On a serious note, though, there are some things that I think do make this an essential episode, aside from opinion. One of them, of course, is agreeing with you that there are some very significant Kirk and Spock character moments, as well as McCoy. I think there's a lot of great stuff there. And it also introduces the Guardian, which appears again in other episodes and other series. So, pretty significant there. I think that it's a good episode to watch for the time travel aspect. It's just another take on time travel in Star Trek. We've seen it done a couple of other ways. And this is another time travel vehicle that's used again in an animated series episode, a significant Spock episode in the future we'll be talking about in the animated series. So there are quite a few things that actually do make this essential. So definitely a double essential vote.
Very good. Very good.
Right.
So as we've said a couple of times during the episode, make sure to check back with us in a couple of days, because we will be putting up a special supplemental discussion based around the City on the Edge of Forever, which I'm sure is going to add a lot to what we've already talked about in the commentary portion of our coverage of the City on the Edge of Forever.
Yep, and April will be back with us. Since now we're done doing our recording here, so she'll be back to do our extended discussion with us, and we are looking forward to that, and it should be pretty cool. I think there's a lot of stuff left to talk about that we just didn't have time to get to during the commentary.
Yeah, so that'll be sort of our deep dive into the City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, definitely. So.
And I guess until then, Jeff, I guess we will see you then.
All right, take it easy. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll see you soon.
I still have a few questions I'd like to ask about you two. And don't give me that. Questions about little old us, look. You know as well as I do how out of place you two are around here.
Interesting. Where would you estimate we belong, Miss Keeler?
You? At his side, as if you've always been there and always will. And you belong in another place. I don't know where or how. I'll figure it out eventually.
I'm finished with the furnace.
Captain. Even when he doesn't say it, he does.